Well, we're here in Owatonna, Minnesota, and I have the pleasure of talking to Dave Duininick, who is from Willmar, Minnesota, and him and his gracious wife drove all the way down this morning through terrible roads and so forth to be with us, and I want to thank you up front for actually taking your time and coming down. It means so much to us. And Dave and I served in Vietnam in 1969 during that part of the war, and he and I saw a lot of action. Let's put it that way. You and I went through a lot of different things during 1969 for sure. And there, as I recall, there seemed to be a few, 3 or 4 guys that kind of hung out, and Manarelli and Cush and you, and I think you guys came in about the same time, didn't you?
Yeah, I think Greg came in January, I came in February, and I think George came in March of '69.
Yeah. So we had a lot of experiences together, and so what we're doing is we're doing an oral interview to put together. We've got a big puzzle of all the guys that we served with, and each guy represents a piece of the puzzle. And my goal is to get all the pieces in there, and then you've got the whole puzzle, and it tells a real story. It tells a real story of our service and what happened to us over there. So to begin with, I'm just going to ask you, what's your date of birth?
9/6/49.
Okay. And where were you born and raised?
I was born in Willmar, Minnesota. Grew up pretty much in that area.
So you've never left home.
Yeah,
so to speak.
We lived in Chicago. I went to school for 4 years in Chicago. Lived there. My wife and I spent 2 years in the military. I graduated from Mankato, so I was gone from that area for about 10 years.
Okay. And did you volunteer or were you drafted?
I was a 2-year RA. I had already. This was back before the lottery. So I was 1A, I passed my physical. I was scheduled, I would guess, to be drafted shortly, but I was somewhat of a prodigal child, and my father and I weren't exactly seeing eye to eye. So we got into it one evening, and I said, I'm going to go down tomorrow and enlisted in the Marine Corps, because I quit school, I wasn't working, I was just kind of hanging out, and he said, well, if you want to go in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, have at it. But he said, if you go in the Marine Corps, don't bother coming home.
Oh. He
was a Marine back in the Second World War.
He was telling you some truth there.
So much for esprit de corps.
Yeah.
But he fought for I don't know how many years in the South Pacific during World War II.
Those guys came home seasoned.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that survived that.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. How old were you at that time?
I had just turned 19.
Okay, so you're just a young man. You went down, and they said, well, if you join voluntarily, instead of 3 years, or 4, whatever it was in those days, they said, we'll let you just do the 2.
Well, actually, the first guy I said, they had a 2-year enlistment in those days. And I said, I want the 2-year enlistment. He said, but if you go in for 3. And I said, no, you didn't hear me right. I said, if I go in for 2, well, then he was still, what? But if you go in for 3, I just walked out. And the next day, or whatever, the other guy was there, this Sergeant Barber, if I remember correctly. Oh, yeah. And I told him he asked me what I wanted. I said, I want the 2-year enlistment. And he said, well, that's fine. I said, is there like any guarantees? Is there a delayed, whatever? He said, no. He said, the only thing I'll probably guarantee is infantry.
Oh, my. So they didn't even try to make you think you were going to be a radio operator?
No, he was pretty honest, and yeah. He said, I said, how about a delayed? Is there a delay? He said, no. He said, when do you want to go? And I remember saying, how about Thursday? He said, you're gone. Sign here.
No kidding. So it was that quick.
I had a crash course in military life because I went in from the 18th of September. We flew to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I went through the 0 week and then 8 weeks of basic. I graduated on Friday. They put us on a plane Friday night, flew us from Fort Campbell to Fort Lewis, Washington. started infantry training on Monday.
You didn't even get the 2 weeks or the...
No, we started...
Nothing. You got nothing.
Got nothing. We got there for, started infantry training on Monday. In fact, we got there on Saturday morning in the middle of the night. They didn't have a place for us, so we slept on a bus. And then we started infantry training on Monday. Went through, I can't remember how many weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. Then we did get a 2-week Christmas leave, and came back from that and went through another 5 weeks, I believe it was. And then we graduated on Friday. They locked us in our barracks for 2 days because the company ahead of ours had gone AWOL.
No kidding.
Yeah. So on Sunday they came and got us. Half of the company went to Seattle to be shipped out from there, and half of us flew to Travis in California.
Oakland.
Yep, we got there on Sunday night, got signed in. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday they called us on my name on the manifest, and the next day or the day after I was in Vietnam. So
you didn't have any time at all to go home, say goodbye to your buddies?
No, I hadn't been in the service for 5 months when I got to Vietnam.
That's the first time I've ever heard.
They told us the first day of infantry training, the captain got up and said, 100%, unless you have a reason, whether it be a brother served in Vietnam or whatever, unless you have a reason, 100% of you guys are going to Vietnam, and you're not going to get a leave before you go. He said, if you...
I can imagine the morale at that point just went sub-zero.
It wasn't the morale as much as the discipline.
Oh,
if they said attention, we were at ease. If they said at ease, we'd light them up.
Oh, yeah.
They lost. I mean, what are you going to do? Send us to Vietnam?
Yeah.
But it was, we got our training and away we went. But
do you remember light them if you got them, bum them if you don't?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember when they first taught you how to field strip a cigarette?
Oh, yeah. In fact, when I got to Fort Campbell, we didn't have uniforms. We just had our civilian clothes on. And they had us on a police call. And they were showing us, they'd showed us at that time how to field strip a cigarette, but then we were picking up cigarette butts on people who didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden this guy grabbed me by the arm and said, come with me. So he was a sergeant of some rank, I think an E6. And he brings me into this kitchen area, mess hall, and he said, start washing, we need you to wash those pots and pans. So I thought, all right. So I started washing pots and pans. Pretty quick he comes over, and it was pans I hadn't even touched. But he takes his thumb or his finger and he goes, there's still grease on these. And he takes all the pans off the wall and he piles them behind me. Fortunately, he piled them so high, when he went around, he couldn't see me. I was gone. He didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
So that was the end of my pots and pans, but I made sure he didn't see me anymore that week.
Wow.
But
what do you specifically remember about basic training itself? What kind of things did you do in basic training? What was the training all about?
I actually enjoyed basic training. Even, drill sergeants realized you could only do so many, physically only do so much. So, and I was in decent shape in those days, and I didn't mind running. I loved to get up and run in the morning. So I'm old enough that we trained with M14s. And
yeah, I did too in basic.
So I realized I was in trouble when they called out of the company of 110, they called, I suppose, 15 of us to, you're going over to such and such, and you're going to learn how to handle an M16. So now I know where I'm, at least I know where I'm headed, so.
No question now.
Yeah, no question, so.
And I thought that was odd too, because when I was in basic, it was M14s,
Mm-hmm.
and we all looked at each other and said, they shoot M16s over there.
Yeah.
And what we were told is that all of the M16s were going to Vietnam. I mean, they couldn't keep up with it,
Yeah.
and that sooner or later we would be trained on the M16. Well, the later is halfway through AIT.
Yeah.
That was our first introduction to the M16.
We had it they sent me over when I was in basic training.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And of course that, from an M14 to an M16, that was pretty cool. Just from a cool standpoint.
just from a cleaning standpoint.
What about AIT? What do you specifically remember about that?
AIT was kind of interesting. I liked learning the weapons. That was interesting.
Yeah, we got to shoot them all, didn't we?
Got to shoot lots of stuff, yeah, and it was good. We went through. I was in Fort Lewis, and we went through they had a Vietnamese village simulated setup, and we went through there with about a foot of snow. So
oh no,
it wasn't too realistic, but it was. We got decent training. It was an old we had old barracks, and we were on North Fort Lewis. But AIT was much better and the food was better, and everything was better as far as that was concerned. But
was your barracks? I went to Fort Ord, and I was there for basic and AIT. They were still using the old wooden 2-story barracks. Was that World War II?
Could have been.
And then remember Firewatch?
Yep.
And there was one. It was 2-story, so there was one fire escape at one end. And it was like a ladder type of thing, and you got to wear the hat and a flashlight, and walk around and listen to everybody farting and snoring and whatnot. But those are things that I remember. You never forget that stuff.
No.
And so AIT, you graduated, and what happened right after graduation?
Well, as I said, they locked us in our barracks because the whole company had basically gone AWOL ahead of ours. So it was the most bizarre.
How do you think they handled that?
Well, they had the same thing. They weren't going to get any leave.
Oh, that was the issue.
Yeah, so these guys took off for, they came back within 30 days. It's a big deal. They bust you from an E2 to an E1. What's that going to cost you? $6 a month?
As long as they didn't throw you in jail.
Well, as long as you don't stay over 30 days.
Yeah.
Then you're AWOL after that, or you're AWOL before, but then it's desertion after 30 days, as I understood
And then you're really in trouble.
Yep. So anyhow, they put us on buses, and they gave food vouchers to somebody, one of the guys in the company, and we stopped somewhere on the way to Seattle for lunch. And there were guys just getting in cabs and leaving, and people walking away. And so we ate and got back on a bus, and then we flew to California, and there were guys from California that parents were picking them up, and they were just driving away and leaving. So we probably had 50% no-shows by the time we got to Oakland. Yeah.
Yep.
But it was hilarious. I mean, nobody was in charge. It was bizarre.
But you didn't do any of that.
Well,
you just kind of stayed on track.
I had been home for Christmas and said my goodbyes, and I didn't want to go through that again.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought about it. I honestly did. In fact, I checked on airfares going home. And I thought, nah, I'm going. So.
When did you get to Vietnam?
Valentine's Day of '69. 50 years ago.
The 14th of February.
I think it was the 14th, yeah.
When you flew in, I'm assuming you went to Benoit like most of us, and then they opened the door, brought up the stairs, and what was your impression the first step in Vietnam?
It stunk. When we were coming in on the airplane, the pilot said, if you'll observe out the right-hand side of your aircraft, you'll see an airstrike taking place. And as we're coming into Vietnam. So then we landed, and I can remember there was just a big green tent without sides on it, with some folding chairs. And there was really just nothing there other than anything permanent.
Yeah.
And then we got there, and then we got on a bus, and I thought it was interesting when they had screens over the windows, which I didn't realize was for a grenade thing.
Yep.
And went from, was it Benoit to Long Binh or Long Binh to Benoit, which is I think Benoit was the airport, wasn't it?
And then Long Binh was I call it the in-processing place where you went and went to the bleachers, waited for your name to be
Yeah.
called and whatnot. And I think it took me 3 days to finally, for them to call my name. So I was in that processing center. And but I had the same identical impression as you did. It was a smell like nothing I'd ever smelled before.
Yeah.
And when they opened the door, guys started to sweat. The humidity and the
Yeah.
heat was just unbelievable. But so did you do a similar thing? Did you go to the area where they were calling off names and giving orders? And
Yeah, and you had to wait till to hear if your name was called,
Yep.
and then if it wasn't called, they'd have. I remember I went to was going to get a beer. There was a enlisted man's club, and it was, you talk about a tension-filled environment. It was a fairly big structure, and it was just like there was a wall down the middle, only there wasn't, and it was all black on one side, white on the other side, and you could just feel the tension. And I said, "Give me 2 beers to go." I was out of there.
Yep.
But it was pretty nasty.
You had no idea where you were going to go,
No,
and they called your name out, and they said, you're going to the 25th Infantry Division Charlie Company.
yeah,
And did they do with you like they did me? There's some trucks waiting down there, and get your gear and stuff, and you'll be getting on a truck, and then they're going to drive you
Yeah.
from here to Coochie.
Yeah.
What was your ride from Long Bend to Coochie like?
You know, I really can't remember that ride, to tell you the truth. I remember the ride from Coochie we were going up to Duininck.
Mm-hmm.
That ride, because I was just telling Jim, I said, I'm 19 years old, I'm sitting in the back of a deuce and a half, no idea what I'm in for doing. And I see we went through one of those fountains in Coochie City, and where it's like the roundabout kind of
Oh,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Well, there's like a half a dozen guys laying there, and I can remember thinking, geez, these people will sleep anywhere. Then I realized they were dead. It's like,
Now, had you already went to Charlie Company and got
Yep.
your gear in the supply room, and
yeah.
you went through all that
Yeah,
routine? Did you get one of the lighters with the Wolfhound crest on it?
I did.
Do you know where those came from?
Mm-mm.
The company clerk, when I got there, his name was Teach Kelly,
Yep.
and that's Dave Kelly. And his father owned a tractor manufacturing company in Indiana.
Okay.
And Teach was just like you and I. He was a grunt, and they were on the Fukong Bridge, and a water buffalo was coming this way, and the guys were walking along the edge, and you know how those water buffalo were.
Yep.
And the water buffalo crushed him up against the barrier and got laid on top of him. And Willie Williams came up and shot the water buffalo, and the bullet went right through Teach's leg.
That can happen.
And so Willie had good intentions, but he wasn't thinking. Because now there's 2,000 pounds, probably, laying on him, and now they got to get it off. And Teach is screaming like a banshee. and they finally did it, and so he was medevaced out. Well, when he was sitting in the evac center, somebody from Charlie Company came over and said, "Do any of you guys in here, any of you know how to type?" Well, Teach, he got his handle because he was a teacher, and he was an excellent typist. And he raised his hand and he goes, "Well, good. When they release you from here, come over to the company. Remember the Quonset hut that was the company, whatever you want to call it." And so the rest of his tour, he was the company clerk, and he would write his dad and say, "Well, is there any way you could get some lighters made up with?" And he showed him the Wolfhound crest, and his dad sent 500 lighters, and so every guy that came in got one of those, and that's the story about where those where those lighters came from. And so you were headed to Duininck. You saw the bodies in the roundabout. What do you remember when you actually arrived at the unit?
Oh, that kind of escapes me. I remember going through the training, which was I think 5 days at that time.
Yep.
And the only thing I can remember about,
I think they called it the finishing school.
Could have been. The only thing I can remember is that they put us in that tent with tear gas at the very end.
And we'd already done that.
Yeah, and I can remember the sergeant, whoever he was, he knew I'd, was holding my breath. So he wasn't going to let me out until I
Took a good gasp.
Well, I finally did, and then he stood in front of me again, and I almost threw him all the way through the tent. I was out of there.
Yep, that was, God. Why would they do that? You're in Vietnam, for God's sake.
Well, we used to get in those areas where they'd use powdered CS, remember that?
Oh, yeah, oh, sure. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got, at Diamond 2, that was the closest to the Cambodian border at that time that they'd ever built one of those hard spots. And we were hearing artillery going off in the distance. Well, we heard that every day.
Yeah.
But this was coming from Cambodia. And they were shooting CS rounds at us. And they were dropping them like 200 feet in front of us because they knew the wind was coming just in the right area. And that was the first time that I realized that we were sitting ducks. If they weren't shooting gas, they could have shot HE, and they could have got us. Why they didn't, I have no idea. But they had us dead to rights.
Yeah.
And but yeah, CS gas from an artillery shell is no fun, I'll tell you.
No.
And there's lots of it. Were you up there at Diamond?
I was at Diamond 2.
So do you remember getting gassed up
I
there?
remember I don't remember where it came from, but I remembered we had those issues.
And that's where they came from. And as a matter of fact, when we pulled Diamond 1, when the last guys were getting on the helicopters, they shot HE rounds at us where the base had been, as if saying,
Adios.
here's a little goodbye for you. Well, I don't know whether it was political. I don't know whether they thought that if they actually did a stunt like that, there would no longer be a problem about going into Cambodia. But that was something else. Who do you remember the first guys that you met when joining the platoon?
Oh, well, Granger and I went over there together, Jerry Granger and Manarelli. Greg was there when I got there. Cush came in shortly thereafter. There's a bunch of guys. It was such a turnover. People were coming and going.
There was a horrible turnover.
Yeah, we went from a lot of guys.
You know who you replaced, don't you? You replaced all the guys that got killed at Diamond 1.
That, but also when we went from Cu Chi, when we went in, after we got into that ambush up there, and then they moved us back to Cu Chi, we went from a lot of, like 40 guys, 44 guys in the platoon, and within a month we were down to 12, 14 guys.
Exactly.
That's when I took over a squad. And like I said, I'd like to think it's because I was really good, but it's actually because I was alive.
There was certain things about getting promoted because of attrition.
That's right.
And
that's why I kept a squad till I left the field. I'm almost till I left the field.
Did you, I know you carried the M79, did you go in with an M16?
Yep.
What caused you to start carrying the 79?
They just needed somebody to do it, and they gave it to me.
It wasn't like pick me.
No,
you didn't raise your
no,
hand and volunteer because you learned
no.
a long time ago you don't volunteer.
Well, it's plus you got to carry all the weight. We carried, what was it, anywhere from
60 rounds
of
60, HE.
Yeah, and they're half a pound apiece.
Plus
your other gear.
Some flechettes, some smoke, some gas, parachute flares, 1 grappling hook.
I didn't have a grappling hook.
It was for shooting over a river.
Yeah.
And supposedly then you could pull, the little pulley and pull a rope across it or whatever. But, so what did you think of the M79 when you first started carrying it, besides the weight on the rucksack?
I liked it. It was, there was, in a situation like going out on ambush, you didn't feel very safe with that just because it was, if somebody's within 10 feet of you, it's not all that much good.
You had buckshell shots, though.
I didn't have them in the gun. I didn't.
They were in the sack.
I don't even know if I had them, to
Yep.
tell you the truth.
And you know, Moose, of course,
Yep.
you know, Moose, he walked point with it. And he had the M79 and he had an old Stevens sawed-off shotgun that he carried with him. And he always had buckshot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he ever put an HE round, because he figured walking point,
Yeah.
if the goose gets cooked, they're going to be close enough. They're going to be close enough to hit something with. And you know, Moose, he's an old Owatonna kid
Yeah.
here. He was a farm kid,
Yeah.
so he figured he was going to take get his best chance if he had that. So, when was the first time that you shot that M79 on purpose?
Oh, I can't remember that. I remember going through, just trying to think when, because when we were in that ambush, I had a 16 yet then. But then I wasn't, when I got to Cuchee area, then I think was when I started with the 79. But I can't remember the first time I fired it.
Go ahead.
No, that's...
Did you have any impression of the old guys that were there when you first went in the platoon? There weren't very many of us.
No.
But I mean, do you remember, did
Yeah.
you have any kind of an impression?
Yeah, I remembered, you know, like Ray and and you and, you know, some of the guys I was always amazed that, you know, some of the leadership that would come in and they were just told you're in charge. And if they'd have listened to guys like Marquez and you guys,
Yep.
you know, they'd have kept a lot more people alive.
Yep.
But they thought, well, I'm in charge now, you know, let's just do it this way. Well,
Yeah, a lot of our guys got killed because of that,
yeah, a lot of stupidity.
especially, you know, up around Shamrock and that area. There were some, you know about that, right?
Yeah.
Where the lieutenant took them in the wrong place. And were you out on that ambush?
I wasn't. I was in that perimeter. but
Okay,
I
well,
wasn't with
you know
that.
the story
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And that was just stupidity.
Yeah, they had no business being there. I texted you that.
Just stupidity, you know. And so, do you remember that we were a little bit standoffish when when the new guys came in? Did we seem like we
A little bit, but I never. You know, I guess I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that.
Yeah. Well,
So.
I'll tell you from our standpoint, when we saw you guys coming in, you represented getting us killed.
Yeah,
That was what we thought. And so number one, we needed you guys so badly. That's on the first point. I mean, there was only like 8 or 10 of us at that time, and we were so shorthanded they wouldn't let us go out. And we were at Trangbang at that time when Lieutenant Baker, the National Guard guy,
Yeah.
he came in at that time. And so then Kid Lozon, remember Mike Lozon,
Oh, yeah.
the little kid? And so then I remember talking to Ray, I said, you know, we can't keep hounding these guys forever. We got, you know what, we better get them and teach them what they need to know, or they're going to get us killed anyway, right? And that's when we changed our whole attitude, and that's when we really started taking you guys under our wings and trying to teach you, you know, the ropes. Do you remember the first ambush patrol you ever went on?
Oh, I don't. There were so many of them. I don't know if I remember the first one.
What was your experience with ambush patrols?
Well, my fondest memory was when Marquez would put us in the rice paddies for how many weeks in a row? Sleep in the rice paddies.
Unbelievable.
I've talked to guys that are coming back from Iraq and, you know, Middle East, and they just laugh. They say, we had it made compared to you guys just on living conditions, you know, and, you know, sleeping in water up to your armpits with your butt in a steel pot for every night for how many weeks. Get into the perimeter and wait for daylight and get naked and pull leeches off each other and go take a nap.
It was, personally for me, it was the most discouraging time of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt, like you described, when we'd come back and you'd see all the leeches, that I was discouraged. I actually, that's the only way I know how to explain it. It was like, what in the world are we doing?
And it would have been something if we did that once.
Oh yeah, sure.
We did it every night for how many weeks?
Yep. I'll never forget that. Do you remember when the first time one of the guys got hurt?
Oh.
Was it a booby trap? I know that we had a lot of booby traps.
Yeah, booby traps were for sure. We had, when I got to Duininck that first day, we got in the afternoon off the convoy. I think it was Fire Base Washington.
Yeah, that's right.
Right at the base of Nui Ba-Din.
Yep.
And they said, get your gear on, you're going out on a sweep. We had to do a, whatever they called it, around the perimeter.
That's what it was.
Before
Yep,
dark.
yeah.
And we got done with that, uneventful, and then they said, you're going on LP tonight. So I said, okay, I'm going on LP, whatever that involves. So I have no idea who was with me, but we went out probably 400 meters, 500 meters, and set up in a paddy.
3 of you.
So I think there was 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the middle of the, well, the first thing we saw was they were shooting rockets from that area, the 107s or the 155s actually. They were shooting them into Duininck City, and that's one of the reasons they had that base there.
Yep.
And I can remember in the middle of the night, I saw this flash, and you could see this rocket taking off in the distance. It was probably, I don't know, 500-600 meters from where I was. And all of a sudden, it just fizzled and came down and kaboom. Oops. So that guy wasn't too happy about the results of that one. But later on that night, they mortared us. And they walked the mortars. They knew where we were. And they walked them.
The 3 of you guys.
Yep, they walked them right through us. We were jumping, literally jumping from back and forth over the rice paddy dike, trying to guess where the next one was going to land. And they went in, and they walked them kind of around the perimeter, and then back around again, and then back over us again, and then that was done.
Were they the little 60 mortars?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
remember. I actually remember that.
I don't remember. We had one guy killed in the perimeter, and he had come out to, some of the guys owed him money from poker debts.
Oh, yeah.
And he had already been into base camp heading home and decided to catch a chopper out, collect his debts. And he was the only one that got killed that night.
You remember who that was?
I have no idea. He
So
wasn't.
was he the first guy that you knew
Yeah.
got killed?
Yeah,
That was your first
yeah,
experience?
Yeah.
And what bases do you remember going to, whether we went there for a day or two? Because I remember they used to send us like to Harris, and we'd only be
Yeah.
there for like 3 days. And we'd man the bunkers,
Yeah.
and then we were out. They'd send us out of there. What kind of hard spots or bases do you remember?
Oh, I remember Jackson. I remember Shamrock. Trying to think.
Diamond,
of the name.
of course.
Diamond. There was one we set up. I don't even think it was we had a name. We hadn't had contact for a little while, so they put us in this awful place. We
Was
had
it
to,
Waterloo?
Could have been Waterloo. When we packed our own sandbags in our backpacks.
Yep, I
And
remember.
filled those, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. And that was where we got one of the guys they were handling stuff incorrectly, and one of the pins fell out of a grenade. Remember that?
Yep.
And lost a couple of guys to that just from stupidity. But I can't remember maybe we called that.
I think it was Waterloo.
It could have been Waterloo.
Yep.
But we had also, that was where we got lucky. We were blowing bunkers, and one of the guys unscrewed the mechanism out of the grenade, and we were going to use it to detonate this. We'd poured fuel or whatever in this bunker, and he went to throw it. We just got a new case of grenades in, and that as soon as he released the handle, it went. They hadn't put the delays on.
Oh gosh.
So we checked that whole case. If you had been thrown at it, it killed him.
Sure it would.
So it was just, amazing that it went off when we figured it out before it hurt anybody.
Wow. Did you ever have the opportunity to go down in a tunnel?
No, I was big enough I didn't have to go in any tunnels.
Me too. That's one of the things I've always said. I was glad I was big.
Yeah, no.
So, what do you remember about the Kit Carson Scout that we had?
I can't tell that story.
Pete.
Yeah. Yeah, I was the one that carried Pete to the chopper when he hit that booby trap. And anyhow, when I bent down to pick him up, he was always snooping around at something. He was knucklehead.
Oh, yeah.
And so he hits this trap. He wasn't hurt that bad, but we had to get him, I don't know, 50, 75 yards to a clear area where we could dust him off.
We were doing 7-day riffs
Yeah.
at that time on the border.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I can't remember that.
7 days out there, walking all day, ambushing all night.
But I went and picked him up, and when I did, my pants tore all the way across my whole crotch. So I'm exposed.
Sure.
And
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. Most of us didn't wear underwear.
no, that's right. And we got into a firefight shortly thereafter. And Garcia, he and I jumped into, Marquez told us to get into this hole that was just ahead of the tree line and put out a base of fire. So we jumped in that, and I was using a grenade launcher, so I was kind of laying on my back shooting. And Garcia opened up with a full round of automatic, and one of the casings landed where it shouldn't have.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, a hot brass.
Then we had to pull back.
A hot brass.
Because the gunshot, the jets were coming in, and we had to pull back. And so I'm walking like I've been on a horse for a week.
Oh, my gosh.
It was one of those days. Manarelli and Cush were set up with the machine gun, and they looked, before this all happened, and they looked, there's a tripwire right ahead of the bipod on the gun. And then a mongoose, this is insane, a mongoose came running, and they both jumped, and the mongoose turned off before it hit that tripwire.
Wouldn't that have been something?
So, yeah, it was an interesting day, to say the least.
Did you get an R&R?
I did. Manarelli and I went to Hong Kong.
Yep, that's where I went.
Yeah.
What was your experience there?
It was interesting, to say the least. It was, I don't know, it was a neat city.
Had the older guys told you which bar to go to and where the best...
We don't want to go there. We don't want to go.
Where they serve the best drinks.
Yeah,
Let's just
that's right.
put it that
Well,
way.
Manarelli and I went looking for clothes first day.
Oh, yeah. Did you get a shark skin suit?
No, but we got just loaded because every
cheap.
place you'd stop to look for clothing, they'd say, well, you want a drink? Yeah. So they'd give you a drink, we wouldn't buy anything, and we'd go to the next place and the same thing again.
I got a
Food for
pair of
free all
shark
day.
skin pants made, and they fit, they tailored, everything was tailored.
Yeah.
And it was cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just everything over there was cheap.
I know when I got home, I was going to go out for the first night, and I came downstairs with some of the clothes that I'd bought in Hong Kong, and my sisters were home, and they're going, no, you're not going out dressed like that. So I don't know what I'd picked, but I guess it wasn't appropriate for the time.
How many months did you serve with the Wolfhounds?
I've been trying to figure that out. I got there in February, and I think I was with them until after Thanksgiving. And then I ended up in Cu-Chi working at LCLC for the rest of my tour.
Was that the leadership?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, leadership course. I went through that, of course.
Yeah.
I think to get your sergeant stripes, I think you had to go in there and do that, didn't you?
I don't know. I went through it when I was a squad leader really early, so they sent me in for that.
But I think that was preparation for that rank,
Yeah.
EE5. And so
But I was in E3 when I went through there.
did you was that the rest of your tour then?
Yep.
At
Yeah.
LCLC?
Yeah.
What was it like your ETS day? What do you remember about the day that you packed your bag and they told you to meet? Remember there was
Yep.
the ETS place? What?
Yeah. It was, I guess my main memory of that was that when we got in country, as I said before, there was, just a tent without walls. And when I left, it was a full terminal. And I can remember looking at that plane. That's what I can remember the most.
Was it a commercial or a military?
It was commercial jet. And I can remember looking at that thing, and I can remember one of the most amazing things was flying home. We flew along the coast of California, Washington, California. And I can remember seeing the lights of the cities. And to this day, I'm still, when I see city lights, it's because for months after you're home, you're still smoking cigarettes like this.
Absolutely.
Because you're used to being, everything is in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
At night you can't. There's no lights anywhere. And this back in the smoking days, but you'd light a cigarette, and people looking at you, sitting there like this, smoking a cigarette that night, and this guy, oh, I guess I don't have to do that. But that was one of my fondest memories, was seeing the lights of the city flying back to the States.
And you landed in Oakland again? You went to Travis again?
Yep.
Yep. Do you remember, did you get any of the heckling or were there people protesting and stuff?
Not so much. There was, that went on, but it was, you kind of avoided it or just stayed away from it. They used to tell us not to fly with our uniforms on, but at that time I didn't really care. I was just going home.
Sure. And were you wounded in Vietnam?
No, other than the brass.
What's that? Oh, yeah. There was a special award, I think, that we gave you for that, wasn't
I did
there?
get a Purple Heart for that.
Did you receive any awards or citations?
Bronze Star, and I don't know. I think that's about it.
Okay. And what was the date again that you left Vietnam?
I think it was
February,
the 14th.
Valentine's Day again?
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what was when you got home to Wilmer? I'm assuming you went to Wilmer.
Yeah.
What was it like? Did your folks have a banner out? What was your homecoming like? I guess, for lack of a better.
Well, it was. I mean, I was excited to be home. I remember my mother making a big meal, and I ate about 10 bites because your stomach shrunk from, you couldn't eat very much, and it was kind of bizarre. It was, nobody talked about anything, obviously, but I can remember going to parties with friends that I'd been friends with forever, and all of a sudden it's like you feel like these guys are in 5th grade. It was just you sit there kind of by yourself, and you don't know what to say. You don't know. It
was like you didn't have anything in common anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It was it was a strange phenomena. You just wanted to just leave me alone. I'm going to just sit over here.
Yep. Did you have any time to do left? Did you have 6 months left to do?
I had 6 months left, so I had a 45-day leave. Then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and I got a 3-month early out for college. So I just did 3 months.
Okay.
I worked. We were training guys going to Vietnam, but they were everything from a private to a major, but they were rear echelon people. So it was kind of hilarious.
And what career or what did you do after coming home from Vietnam?
Oh, I went back to college, and whoa, piece of ice fall. But I went back to college started in Mankato again. Well, actually, when I got early out, I went to a smaller school because they started late enough so that I could get a full 90-day drop. And so I went there just for one summer session, and then I went to Mankato starting that next winter. I driving truck for a construction outfit for the fall, and then I went back to school and went to Mankato till I graduated.
What were you going for? What was your degree?
Well, I kind of switched around from things. I ended up with a major in sociology and urban studies. And when I first started college, I was more interested in going into healthcare of some sort or another, but then I kind of got sidetracked. So I ended up with a double major in that, and then I somehow or another ended up in chiropractic school. So.
And you did that from then on?
Yep.
Now, I can't remember. How many years did you have to go for chiropractic?
Well, I graduated from Mankato after 4 years, and chiropractic was just under 4 more years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, 3.5
and as I
years.
recall, there were 2 major chiropractic schools in
No,
those?
there's a lot more than that. But I went to Chicago, to National in Chicago.
Is that what, that was one of the big
Yeah,
ones, right?
yeah.
Wasn't there another one that was kind of a big one?
Oh, there's Palmer in Iowa.
That's the one,
Yeah.
no, that's the one I was thinking
Yeah.
of. Because, you know,
Those are probably the oldest.
and chiropractors are proud of where they went, because you would see in their office something about Palmer,
Yeah.
you know, so they must have been pretty proud of the school that they went to. When did you get married?
72.
And how did you meet your wife?
Well, the first time we met, my wife's, when I first came back to town, my wife's grandfather, who was 80 at that time, or close to 80, asked me to speak on a nutrition thing at the Senior Kiwanians thing.
Oh, yeah.
So when he introduced me, his introduction was, and I don't remember the exact ages, but anyhow, something like, "The man that's going to speak to you today," is what he said. 30 years ago, he slept with my granddaughter, but he was an honorable man. 22 years later, he married her.
Oh, God.
And these old guys are looking around like,
Oh.
what's he talking about?
Oh,
Sherry and I were in the nursery together at Rice Hospital in Roma when we were
for
born.
heaven's sake.
Her birthday is the day after mine. So we were
And for him to come up
yeah,
with,
for
I
an
mean,
80-year-old,
think
that's pretty
think
good.
about that.
Yeah, that's pretty good for an 80-year-old.
So then, how old were you guys when you got married?
22, I think.
And when did you start having a family?
That was 6 years later, because we waited until after I was pretty much done with chiropractic school. Towards the very, I think, our son Christopher was born in March, and I graduated in December.
Okay.
So
And how many kids?
just two, Katie and Christopher.
Okay. And
I was going to ask you, did the prodigal ever come home?
Yeah, he did. So we got it all figured out after that.
oh, that's good. That's a good part of the story, isn't
Yeah,
it?
no, it was just it was that stupid age in life where you
Oh, of course.
19 and being an
I
idiot.
went through the same
Yeah.
thing, actually. So what did your kids end up pursuing? What did they do in life?
Our daughter is a mortgage broker out by Aspen, Colorado area, Carbondale area, and our son he's the chief estimator. He does the bidding on road construction jobs for Duininck companies, which is a huge corporate or a construction business.
Did you say Duininck?
Yep. Relatives.
Related?
Yep. They are.
Wow. So you got to be proud of those kids.
Yep, they've done a good job. They
How
work
many
hard.
grandkids?
We have they each have two. We do family planning. Sherry and I had a boy and a girl. Christopher had a boy and a girl, and Katie had a boy and a girl.
Oh, that's
So,
that's
We
awesome.
have two 4-year-olds. They each have a 4-year-old. Chris's little Coco is 4, and Teddy is 4, and Isabel is 8. That's Katie's, and Oliver is 13.
When you came home from Vietnam, did you stay in touch with any of the guys, any of us that were in Vietnam?
A little bit. Manarelli came out, I think, if I remember right, he hitchhiked from Detroit out to Minnesota, and it was one of those situations where it was kind of awkward, actually. Being in the world was different.
Yes, it was.
And I hadn't been out long enough to really know how to deal with things.
By the way, I
and-
think it's an interesting commentary. Those were the days when you could thumb.
Yeah, I hitchhiked all over the place.
I did too.
Yeah. But anyhow, there's an interesting sideline when he went back. I don't think I heard from him or Cush for, I think it was 15 years. And there's one of the churches in my hometown has a 4th of July celebration. And it's very patriotic, very, very well done. And they had a guest speaker who was a double amp from Vietnam. And they had a men's thing going on a Friday morning. And so they called my dad and I, and they wanted us to go and listen to this guy. So I said, all right, we'll do that. So we went, and listened to him for an hour, and there was 3 combat vets in the room. This guy that was speaking, my dad and I, and nobody else had any combat experience. So everybody was just ranting and raving what a great presentation it was. And so we got in the car, and my dad said, "What'd you think?" And I said, "I'm not that much." He said, "That's kind of what I was thinking." But it got me thinking, you know, things that you put in the back of your head and you forget about. And I started thinking about Greg, and I started thinking about Cush and some of you guys. And that was on Friday. The following Thursday, I'd been fishing. I had Thursday afternoons off. I went fishing. I came home at 10 o'clock at night, walked in the house, the phone rings. It's Manarelli. Hadn't heard from him in 15 years. He said, "I don't know why, I was just thinking about you lately." Which is weird enough. But a couple days later, I get the same call from Cush. I'm thinking, ooh, Twilight Zone stuff.
Wow.
So, but then we've been kind of, since then, we've kept in touch.
Sure.
And we went, my wife and I flew to Chicago, it was 12 years ago, I suppose now, and got together with those 2 guys and their wives for MEA weekend. So,
What did you think of your first reunion?
the first one I went to was in Vegas, and it was an absolute emotional roller coaster. I'm very glad I went. It stirred some things that I didn't want stirred, but it was, you had the speaker that had been shot down over Laos, which was an incredible hour to listen to that guy. And one of the first guys I ran into,
Steve Long.
Yeah, one of the first guys I ran into was Herrera, who I never, ever, ever figured I'd see him again. Last time I saw him was, well, I don't even want to go there. But anyhow, it was fun.
The day that he stepped on that 105.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the day? Yeah. And you and I just talked the other day. You were out on the right flank.
I was on the left flank.
Or that's right. Sorry, left flank.
Yeah.
Because remember, I asked you if you could see anything, and you were right on the side where Clennon and Marquez was walking across and so forth. So you were actually in a catbird seat.
Yep. Unfortunately, I was.
So yeah, old Matthias, he's quite a character too.
Yeah,
you know,
He was funny. He said, sat down and just I was overwhelmed. And we got to talking, and he said, "Well, where do you get your meds?" And I said, "I don't take any." "You don't take any meds?" I go, "No." "You don't take any meds?" I said, "No." He said, "What do you take?" I said, "I take some vitamins." "You don't take any meds?" I said, "No, but a lot of those guys with, you got parts missing, you're on meds for a big chunk of your life."
I went out to see him. I actually went to his house and see him. And the first thing he did is he said, how much benefits are you getting from the VA? And he goes, "If you're not getting enough, I've got a guy at the VA that can do it all, can get it all done." And he was just like insistent, you know. And I said, "No, I don't need anything." And he goes, "Well, I'm taking you over to him," and he did. And he said, "This guy got me my house redone. He got me a computer. He would have never had a computer before, and then he actually got to where he was online, you know, and he could do that." And you know, and I said, "Matthias, I'm good. Don't, you know." But he was insistent that I meet his VA guy. What is your definition of a hero?
Oh, I'm not very good with definitions, to tell you the truth. But
what do you think a hero is?
Well, it's someone that's willing to put themselves and put their lives on the line for somebody else.
Okay. Did you think there was any heroes in Vietnam?
There was a lot of heroes in Vietnam. A lot of heroes that didn't come home, or came home with not quite the person they were when they left.
Yep, indeed. And what does the American flag mean to you?
It means a whole lot. It's you know, I can't believe the way it gets treated. It's just, you know, you go to a high school game and they're playing a national anthem, and these kids, you know, some of the kids are screwing. I mean, there's always a bunch of kids that are doing just what they should be doing, But then there's always a handful of them screwing around and not paying any attention, and it just, it just irritates.
Well, and you're lucky in Wilmer, you don't have half the student body carrying Mexico flags.
No, that's for sure. We got plenty of, plenty there. We got a lot of Hispanic.
You know what I'm,
Yeah.
what I'm saying, though.
But no, that's good.
And as you know, this is, I've committed, I'm gonna find the funds to keep our website up for 100 years. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want your family and generations to come. You know what Ancestry.com is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can you imagine your great-great-grandson talking and somebody says, well, your great-great-grandpa was served in Vietnam. And of course, you're long gone by then.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, yeah, there's a place where you can actually go hear him talk.
Yeah.
And then they would have an opportunity to see you in living color,
Mm-hmm.
talking, and so forth. I want you to just, for all of those people that are going to come after you're gone, what advice do you have for them?
Oh, it's, what can you say about kids nowadays? It's, the only thing, support your country, love your country, do what you have to do, work hard. That's the biggest thing, work hard. If you work hard, you'll never be out of a job. That's, I guess, the one bit of wisdom I'd have, and that's what I tried to teach my children was, said, I don't care what you're doing. If you give them an honest day's work, do what you're supposed to do, you'll never run out of work because there's so many people out there that are worthless at work. And when you can be a worker, you're going to be successful.
Truth, that's great advice.
So,
And finally, my last question for you is, what has your wife meant to you all these years?
well, that's a hard one to put a finger on because of the fact that I said we go back to birth, and we've been together we started out in 7th grade. We either met the summer before 7th grade or in 7th grade, and we've been hanging around ever since.
Wow.
So it's a long time ago.
How many years of marriage now?
I think it'll be 47 in May.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's special.
Has she been a good, like in the early days, was she a good supporter and understanding of, your temperament maybe, or,
Yeah, if I've always maintained if you can't get along with my wife, you can't get along with anybody on
wow,
the planet.
that's great.
She loves people. She's cares about people, and she has nothing bad to say about anybody.
That's awesome.
So
She's a great lady.
she is a great lady.
Dave, I want to thank you for
Thank you.
taking the time. You drove all the way down here.
And not as far as you.
And I've told this to people before. Pound for pound, I think you were one of the best soldiers I ever served with.
Well, thank you. I think it's all BS, but thanks anyhow.
Oh, it's not. I don't think I know of a single guy that filled more sandbags than you did.
Well, it's not easy when you've got 2 shovels, 20 guys filling sandbags, and you got everybody look busy. That's the military way.
I'm not kidding. You were one of the guys that I respected. I really respected you. And that's why it tickles me so much that we got back together again.
Yeah,
Because, you and I went through a lot of stuff. That's all there is to it.
yeah, we did, but that's gone. It's
Yep.
over.
Yep.
We're still here.
So thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.